The first thing you need to understand about my story is this. I never wanted to be that neighbor. You know the type. The one who causes a stir at HOA meetings. The one who racks up violation notices like parking tickets. The one people whisper about at block parties. No. When I bought my modest home on the edge of Cedar Glen Estates, complete with its perfectly trimmed hedges, its aggressively beige homes, and its never-ending stream of passive-aggressive HOA newsletters, I intend to keep my head down and enjoy my little slice of suburban peace. But peace, as I learned, was never truly an option. Not when there's a Karen in charge of the HOA. Her name was Donna, but the neighborhood called her Chicken Karen long before my saga even began. She wasn't called that because she had chickens. Oh no, she was called that because she made it her mission in life to ban them. Chickens, ducks, goats, bees. Any creature that might offer its owner a scrap of independence from grocery store tyranny. She considered a threat to suburban order. According to the HOA bylaws she enforced like commandments from on high, livestock of any kind was strictly prohibited within Cedar Glen Estates. Donna's interpretation of livestock, anything with feathers or hooves, even if it slept indoors. Never mind that across the county line, backyard chickens were not just allowed. They were practically celebrated, complete with farmers markets and suburban homesteading Facebook groups. But not here, not under Donna's rule. When I moved in, I didn't know any of this. I just wanted a quieter life. See, I was burned out. I'd spent years working in restaurant kitchens, grueling hours, endless stress, and paychecks that barely covered rent in the city. I had dreams of one day opening my own small place, something farm-to-table and genuine, where I could serve food that actually meant something to the people who ate it. But dreams like that are expensive. So when my aunt left me a small inheritance, I made the practical choice. I bought a house with a little land on the edge of town, hoping to reset my life. And yes, I brought my chickens. Not a massive flock, just 6 hens. Rhode Island Reds, if you're curious. Quiet, friendly, reliable layers. They stayed behind a tall wooden privacy fence. Out of sight and certainly out of mind. No roosters. No noise. Just a small coop, some straw, and the gentle cluck of content birds scratching at the dirt. To me, they weren't livestock. They were therapy, a connection to something slower, more grounded than my old life. For a while, no one noticed. Neighbors waved politely. Some even stopped to chat about the raised garden beds I installed or the neat rows of herbs lining my patio. A few complimented me on the fresh eggs I occasionally shared. Small cartons left discreetly on doorsteps with handwritten notes. No one complained. No one even hinted at disapproval. Until Donna found out. It happened the way these things always seem to, by accident, and during the worst possible timing. One Saturday morning, I was out back, refilling the feeder and cleaning the coop. My fence gate had been left ajar, probably by the landscapers, and one of my hens, curious as ever, wandered out onto the greenbelt path that ran behind the houses. Right as I turned the corner to retrieve her, there stood Donna, visor, clipboard, power walk shoes, the full HOA uniform. She froze. I froze. The chicken pecked at a dandelion. What is that doing here? Donna's voice carried the sharpness of someone who'd spent decades crafting complaints. She slipped out of the yard. I'll get her back inside. That's livestock, Donna said, her tone accusing, like I'd just unleashed a feral hog into playground. She's a chicken, I said. A pet. Donna's eyes narrowed behind her oversized sunglasses. Pets are cats, dogs, birds in cages, not farm animals scratching around suburban yards. I scooped up my hen. She's quiet. No one's complained. I'm complaining. And I'm the HOA president. That was the first shot fired. Within 48 hours, I received my first official notice of violation. Bold letters. Legal jargon. A threat of escalating fines if the livestock was not removed within 7 days. I called the HOA office to explain, politely, that these were small backyard hens, well within the bound of reason, and certainly not disturbing anyone. The clerk sounded sympathetic, but useless. You'll need to take it up with the board, she said. And that's Donna. So, I tried to reason with Donna directly. Big mistake. The next HOA meeting was held in the community clubhouse, a sterile room decorated with framed photos of past board members and artificial plants. I stood up during the resident comments portion and calmly laid out my case. The chickens were contained, clean, quiet. I shared photos. I offered examples from nearby neighborhoods with similar allowances. I even referenced urban agriculture laws from our own county. Donna listened, arms folded, lips pursed like a lemon slice. When I finished, she leaned forward into her microphone and said, "Thank you for your remarks. However, the HOA bylaws are clear. Livestock is prohibited." Several neighbors shifted uncomfortably. One or two avoided eye contact. Donna smiled victorious and banged her little gavel. Meeting adjourned. The following week, I received another violation notice, this one with an increased fine, $150 for continued noncompliance. Donna was escalating. I was becoming that neighbor. At first, I considered backing down, selling the hens, removing the coop, keeping my head down. But something in me bristled. Why should I cave to arbitrary rules enforced by someone with nothing better to do than patrol green belts for row poultry? My chickens weren't hurting anyone. They weren't noisy, weren't unsanitary. They were healthier than half the neighborhood's yappy, unsupervised dogs. And besides, Donna's obsession wasn't really about the chickens. It was about control. That realization sparked something in me. I started doing research. Deep dives into HOA law, county codes, agricultural allowances for suburban properties. Turns out, Donna wasn't as ironclad as she thought. Our HOA's bylaws were outdated, loosely worded, and most importantly, unenforceable where county law allowed exceptions. And our county allowed backyard hens, up to 8, provided they were well-maintained and not disruptive. I gathered documents, highlighted statutes, prepared a portfolio thicker than Donna's beloved rulebook. I also started talking to my neighbors, quietly at first, over fences, at mailboxes, during early morning walks. Turns out, more people than I realized were tired of Donna's reign. Stories spilled out, fines for leaving holiday lights up too long, threats over paint colors, letters about lawn height, discrepancies measured in inches. She'd built her little empire on fear and technicalities. But now, people were ready to push back. By the time I requested a formal hearing to contest the fines, I wasn't alone. Neighbors showed up. Some spoke. Others just watched, but their presence mattered. The tide was turning. In that hearing, I presented everything: the county ordinances, the legal precedents, the evidence of no harm done. I quoted from Donna's own bylaws where they conflicted with current law. I exposed a weakness in her enforcement. The board squirmed. Donna fumed. In the end, they tabled the decision, promised to review legal guidance. But Donna, she didn't back down. She doubled down. That night, under the cover of darkness, someone snipped the latch on my chicken coop. I woke to find feathers scattered, 2 hens missing. My cameras caught nothing. My neighbors suspected plenty. I filed a report, replaced the lock, reinforced the coop. That's when I decided, if Donna wanted to fight over chickens, I'd give her one, but not in the way she expected. Not through arguments, not through HOA hearings, not through petty retaliation, through business, through community, through food. If I couldn't keep my chickens here, I'd take them somewhere bigger, somewhere better. I'd turn this fight into something Donna could never touch. And that's how the idea for my farm-to-table restaurant was born. The thing about people like Donna, the HOA queen bee, is they thrive on making you feel small, on turning a rule book into a weapon and pretending they're defending community standards. But what Donna didn't realize is this: I come from kitchens, from restaurants where stress breaks lesser people, where 16-hour days are normal, where chaos is just background noise. People like her, they don't scare me. They motivate me. After the sabotage of my coop, after the stolen hens, after the fines kept rolling in despite my airtight evidence, I realized something important. Donna wasn't just trying to enforce the rules. She wanted to make an example of me. She wanted the neighborhood to see what happened when someone dared defy the HOA. So I decided to give them something worth talking about. It started small. While I solidified plans for my bigger retaliation, the farm-to-table restaurant, I began making quiet moves that Donna couldn't quite pin down, but couldn't ignore either. First, I joined every local community board I could find. Not HOA-related ones, but public ones. Gardening clubs, urban homesteading forums, small business groups. I became visible. I attended city council meetings. I shook hands with people who had influence beyond Donna's little suburban fiefdom. Then I took my chickens, what few remained, and moved them temporarily to a friend's acreage just outside city limits. I framed it publicly as complying with HOA guidelines while pursuing legal avenues. Privately, I was preparing for something much bigger. Meanwhile, I started selling. Quietly at first. Baked goods, fresh eggs from my friend's farm, herb bundles, and pickles made from my garden's overflow. I set up a stall at the local weekend farmers market. Not in my HOA, but close enough for word to spread. My branding was simple but effective. Feather and fork, from backyard to table. A nod to the fight Donna thought she was winning. Neighbors noticed. They came. They bought. They spread the word. Donna noticed, too. One Saturday, she showed up at my market stall. She didn't buy anything. She didn't say a word. She just stood there, tight-lipped, sunglasses perched like armor, watching me hand over cartons of eggs to smiling customers. Watching me laugh, chat, thrive. Later that week, I received yet another violation notice. This time accusing me of operating a commercial business from a residential property, despite the fact that I was selling nothing from my home. The notice cited vague bylaws about signage and commercial intent. It was flimsy, it was desperate, but it was still another shot fired. That's when I realized Donna wasn't escalating because she had power. She was escalating because she was losing it. Her reports grew more unhinged. Claims that my garden beds constituted unauthorized landscaping. That my front porch herb pots were agricultural encroachment. That my compost bin violated sanitation codes. Each accusation thinner than the last. Each one dismissed by the HOA board after cursory review. But each one a reminder that Donna wasn't letting go quietly. And through it all, my reputation grew. Neighbors who once avoided eye contact at HOA meetings started chatting with me over jars of homemade jam. People who'd never questioned the HOA's authority before began asking quiet questions about bylaws, about rights, about why Donna seemed so obsessed with one person's backyard chickens. Even the local news caught wind, a small human interest piece about the chicken lady of Cedar Glen and her fight for suburban self-sufficiency. It painted me as quirky, resilient, harmless. Donna hated it. Her next move was pure desperation. She tried to get my mortgage lender involved. One afternoon, I received a letter, not from the HOA, but from my bank, forwarding a complaint Donna had sent alleging that my unauthorized agricultural activities devalued neighboring properties and violated community covenants tied to my home loan. She wanted the bank to pressure me, to threaten foreclosure, to force me out. What she didn't realize is that I'd already refinanced. My loan terms no longer reference the HOA's outdated covenants. My lender couldn't have cared less about a few chickens or garden beds. But the letter? That was the final straw. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. I was focused. I ramped up my restaurant plans. Through the connections I'd made at those city council meetings, I secured a lease on a small, run-down property just outside Cedar Glen. Close enough for locals, far enough to be free of Donna's reach. An old general store with enough land out back for a proper kitchen garden, and, yes, a legal permitted chicken coop. I hired a contractor. I filed permits. I branded everything meticulously, feather and fork, farm to table, locally grown, community raised. And I made sure Donna knew about it. Invitations to the soft opening went out to local press, influencers, food bloggers, and yes, members of the Cedar Glen HOA board. Not Donna specifically, but she wasn't stupid. She saw the flyers. She saw the banners. She heard the chatter. At the grand opening, I stood in front of a packed dining room, neighbors, reporters, city officials, and thanked everyone for supporting local agriculture, for embracing sustainability, for standing up to small-minded people who fear what they don't understand. I didn't name names. I didn't have to. The smirks around the room said it all. Photos of the event circulated online. My chickens featured prominently, pecking contentedly in their coop behind a restaurant, a charming backdrop for social media posts about fresh eggs and farm-fresh menus. Reviews rolled in. Business boomed. And Cedar Glen buzzed. Neighbors who'd once whispered about me now openly patronized my restaurant. Some brought friends. Some brought stories of their own battles with Donna's pettiness. The tide wasn't just turning, it was breaking. Donna's final gambit came in the form of a lawsuit. She filed suit against me personally, claiming damages to her reputation, harassment, and emotional distress caused by my public defiance of HOA standards. It was laughable. My attorney had a field day dismantling complaint. The suit never made it past preliminary hearings. But the damage to Donna was done. Her reputation within the HOA crumbled. Board members who'd once nodded along to her every decree began questioning her leadership. Residents pushed for new elections, whispered about term limits, talked about reform. Donna stopped showing up at meetings, stopped patrolling the Greenbelt, stopped sending notices. And me, I expanded. Feather and Fork grew from a novelty to a staple. I hired staff. I hosted events. I partnered with local schools for farm-to-table education programs. My chickens, those supposed symbols of suburban defiance, became mascots for a movement. When the HOA finally held a vote to amend its bylaws, removing outdated bans on small-scale urban agriculture, the measure passed overwhelmingly. Donna wasn't there to see it. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even vindicated. I was busy planning our next seasonal menu. By the time Donna's flimsy lawsuit collapsed in court, I had already shifted my mindset. This was no longer about chickens. It wasn't even about the HOA. It was about something bigger, proving that people like Donna, people who hide behind rules and authority to control others, can't stop someone determined to build something real. I wasn't interested in winning small battles anymore. I wanted to win in a way that Donna, and anyone like her, could never undo. I focused all my energy on growing Feather and Fork. What started as a tiny farm-to-table restaurant with a backyard coop and a handful of garden beds was about to become something much larger, much more public, and much more humiliating for Donna. First, I expanded my partnerships. I reached out to local farms, bakeries, creameries, and apiaries, positioning Feather and Fork not just as a restaurant, but as a hub for the entire farm-to-table community. We launched pop-up markets on weekends, offering fresh produce, eggs, honey, bread, products from my own garden, my chickens, and my new partners. These events drew people from neighborhoods far beyond Cedar Glen. They brought families, reporters, influencers, even city officials. We weren't just feeding people. We were building a movement. I documented everything. Social media became my best ally. Photos of lush garden beds, happy hens, bustling weekend markets, and plates of colorful, hyperlocal food flooded our feeds. Our tagline, from backyard rebellion to community table, caught on. It wasn't just a restaurant anymore. It was a statement, a story, the kind people shared. And, like clockwork, Donna couldn't resist trying to interfere. Her tactics grew more desperate, more transparent. Anonymous complaints to the health department. We passed inspections with flying colors. Petty online reviews left under fake names, easily traced. Snide comments to anyone who would listen about unprofessionalism and unsanitary farming practices. But for every jab she tried to land, I posted another beautiful photo, another happy customer review, another feature in a local magazine or TV spot. My visibility became my shield. But the real retaliation? That required patience. Precision. I knew Donna's weakness wasn't just her obsession with control. It was her reputation. For decades, she'd been the iron-fisted ruler of Cedar Glen's HOA, basking in the illusion of respect and authority. I wanted to dismantle that, not with rumors or retaliation, but with facts, with exposure. So I started gathering stories. Neighbors, emboldened by my success, began coming forward with their own tales of Donna's petty tyranny. The fines for lawn ornaments, the The threats over children's chalk drawings on sidewalks, the letters about mailbox colors and wind chimes. I collected them, documented them, organized them. I found patterns, bias, overreach. One neighbor revealed that Donna had been approving her own landscaping changes without proper board approval, while denying others the same permissions. Another shared a letter where Donna threatened legal action over a child's lemonade stand. The stories piled up. I wasn't the only one fed up. Quietly, I rallied the neighborhood. We formed a coalition, Residents for a Reasonable HOA. We weren't anarchists. We didn't want to burn down the HOA. We just wanted fairness, consistency, reason, and we wanted Donna out. We gathered signatures, enough to call a special meeting for a vote of no confidence in the current HOA leadership, enough to force elections, enough to rewrite the bylaws if we had to. I made sure the press knew about it. Local news stations loved the narrative. Neighborhood revolts against tyrannical HOA president. They highlighted my story as the spark that lit the fire. They filmed at Feather and Fork, capturing shots of happy families dining beside the garden where chickens clucked contentedly. They interviewed neighbors, collected horror stories, aired them in sympathetic segments. Donna's power crumbled under the weight of public scrutiny. By the time the special HOA meeting arrived, the community center was packed beyond capacity. People stood in doorways, sat on floors. The tension in the air was thick, years of silent resentment finally breaking through. Donna tried to maintain her composure. She banged her gavel, reminded everyone of decorum, cited bylaws she no longer controlled. But it was useless. Speaker after speaker stood up, shared their stories, their frustration, their desire for change. And when the vote finally came, anonymous paper ballots counted twice for accuracy. The result was overwhelming. Donna was out, removed as HOA president, barred from future board participation. A new leadership team was elected on the spot. People who value community over control, who understood that neighborhoods thrive on cooperation, not fear. The new board's first act? To formally amend the HOA bylaws, aligning them with county ordinances, and explicitly allowing backyard chickens, gardens, and small-scale home agriculture within reason. The second act? An official apology to me. But I wasn't done. I used the momentum to expand Feather and Fork again, this time into education. We started hosting workshops, gardening basics, composting, backyard chickens, urban homesteading. Families from Cedar Glen and beyond attended, eager to learn, to connect, to reclaim a bit of independence from the systems that sought to control every inch of their lives. The press kept coming. The story kept growing. And Donna? She retreated, sold her home quietly within months, moved to another community where, I can only assume, she's found new bylaws to weaponize. But here, in Cedar Glen, her legacy was over. The day the HOA board officially removed Donna from her post wasn't the end of the story. It was just a moment I realized how thoroughly I had beaten her. Not with fists, not with lawsuits, but with patience, strategy, and the power of a neighborhood united against petty tyranny. But Donna's downfall wasn't complete until everyone understood exactly how far she had tried, and failed, to push her power. That's where the true payoff lay. Not in her removal alone, but in turning her obsession with control into a cautionary tale, one everyone could see with their own eyes. About 2 weeks after Donna was ousted, the new HOA board invited me to speak at the next community meeting. It wasn't mandatory. It wasn't even expected, but it was symbolic, a gesture of goodwill, a nod to the fact that this neighborhood's culture had shifted because I stood my ground. I walked into that meeting room with a small folder of documents under one arm and a quiet, satisfied smile on my face. The crowd wasn't hostile anymore. These were people who had shopped at my market stand, dined at my restaurant, liked my posts, and quietly rooted for me while Donna tried to ruin me. They nodded, smiled, gave small waves of encouragement. And there, slouched in the back row, trying to appear invisible, was Donna herself. She wasn't technically barred from attending. She was a resident, after all, but she wasn't a force of authority anymore. No gavel, no title, no power. Just another homeowner sitting with folded arms and a sour expression, stewing in the wreckage of her former little empire. When it was my turn to speak, I kept it simple. I thanked the community for their support, the new board for their fairness, and acknowledged how hard it is to live somewhere where people forget that neighborhoods are supposed to feel like home, not like a battleground. Then, calmly, I held up the folder and explained what I had brought. Inside were copies of every violation notice Donna had sent me, annotated with the dates they were refuted or overturned. Photos of my vandalized chicken coop, a printed-out transcript of her laughable lawsuit's dismissal, copies of city health inspections, business permits, and the press articles that had chronicled her increasingly ridiculous vendetta. I even included the letter from my bank, where they flatly rejected her attempt to leverage my mortgage against me. All of it laid out for anyone to see. The new HOA president, an affable retired teacher named Greg, asked if I wanted the documents entered into the official community records. I said yes, not out of pettiness, out of principle. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about ensuring no future HOA leader could ever try this nonsense again. That transparency and accountability would replace secrecy and fear. The room applauded, not thunderously, but warmly, appreciatively. People understood what this represented. The end of an era where one bitter person could hold an entire neighborhood hostage with citations and scare tactics. Donna stood up, her chair scraping loudly, and marched toward the door without a word. That, in itself, was its own kind of victory lap. But there was one more layer of poetic justice waiting. You see, Feather and Fork had continued growing, not just in popularity, but in influence. The workshops I hosted, they evolved into partnerships with local schools, field trips for kids to learn where their food comes from, cooking classes for adults looking to reclaim lost skills. Even the city government took notice, inviting me to speak at a regional conference about urban agriculture and small business development. The cherry on top, I was nominated for a Community Impact Award, not just for the restaurant, but for helping change Cedar Glen's culture, from a place ruled by petty restrictions to one that embraced sustainability, cooperation, and local enterprise. The award ceremony was open to the public. Local press covered it. And wouldn't you know it, Donna's name came up, not as a guest, but as a punchline in my brief acceptance speech. I want to thank everyone who supported Feather and Fork, I said, smiling out at the crowd, even those who indirectly inspired it. Sometimes the strongest roots grow in the hardest soil. Polite laughter, applause. The camera panned over the audience. Donna sat rigid, expressionless, as neighbors she'd once terrified stood and clapped for the business, the movement, the change she had tried so desperately to prevent. In the weeks following, Cedar Glen felt like a different place entirely. People planted more gardens. Chickens reappeared behind privacy fences. Neighbors exchanged homegrown produce recipes and encouragement instead of suspicious glances. And when new families moved in, they were welcomed, not warned. Feather and Fork became more than a restaurant. It became a landmark, a reminder that small acts of defiance, done the right way, can reshape an entire community. The final twist of irony came 6 months later, when I overheard a conversation at my market stand. A couple newly moved in, asking a longtime resident about the neighborhood's history. Weren't they super strict about this stuff? Chickens, gardens, all that? Oh, sure, the neighbor said with a chuckle. But that was before Feather and Fork, before Donna got run out. Things are different now. Different, better, stronger. All because one HOA president underestimated a backyard chicken keeper with a stubborn streak and a background in kitchens. Looking back, it's almost funny how it all started with chickens. A few hens scratching in the dirt behind my fence. A harmless hobby that spiraled into neighborhood warfare. I never set out to be a symbol of change. I certainly didn't expect to become the face of an entire movement in our town. Yet here we were, months after Donna's reign had ended, years after her first threatening letter, standing on the other side of it all with a thriving business, a united neighborhood, and a reputation Donna could never touch again. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The HOA had tried to crush me for raising chickens. Now, thanks to those very same chickens, I was feeding half the neighborhood. Feather and Fork became more than a restaurant. It evolved into a gathering place, a space where people came not just to eat, but to reconnect. Families hosted birthdays in the garden courtyard. Retirees volunteered to teach kids how to compost. We even hosted seasonal events. Spring planting days, summer cookouts, autumn harvest festivals, winter markets beneath strings of lights and warm cider stands. What used to be a quiet, fearful suburb obsessed with lawn heights and mailbox colors had transformed into something resembling a community. Neighbors who once barely nodded now exchanged seeds, recipes, and parenting advice. People who had lived side by side for years without speaking were now organizing carpool rotations, co-op gardens, and shared chicken-sitting duties. And Donna? Well, Donna became something of suburban ghost story. Rumor had it she moved 3 towns over to a retirement community with no pets allowed, no gardens permitted, and HOA board twice as strict as the one she once ruled. Fitting in its way. She built her world out of control and rules. Now she lived under someone else's thumb. Occasionally, I'd hear whispers from former neighbors who stayed in touch with acquaintances of hers. Apparently, she warned people about me now, told them I was a cautionary tale. That's fine by me. Let her name be a warning. To HOA bullies everywhere, that people are only willing to be pushed so far. The neighborhood, though, couldn't have been happier. The new HOA board, led by Greg, turned out to be exactly what we needed: reasonable, transparent, and fair. Under his leadership, they amended dozens of outdated bylaws. Gone were restrictions against backyard chickens and vegetable gardens. Gone were fines for harmless decorations or overnight guests. They focused instead on real issues: community safety, infrastructure, fostering neighborhood pride. We even collaborated on projects together. Greg's wife volunteered at Feather and Forks Weekend Market. Board members attended our educational workshops, brought their grandkids to pet the goats we added to the garden. It felt less like living under surveillance and more like, well, like living in a neighborhood should feel. One of my proudest moments came when we expanded Feather and Forks' mission beyond Cedar Glen. I partnered with a local nonprofit to establish educational gardens in underserved neighborhoods. We donated produce, hosted cooking classes, and taught kids how to grow their own food, even in small spaces. Our little rebellion had grown into something bigger, something that mattered. It wasn't long before regional news outlets picked up the story again. From HOA target to community hero, how one backyard garden changed a town. We were even featured in a national piece about urban farming, which brought a flood of new customers, partnerships, and opportunities. What Donna tried to stamp out had become my career, my livelihood, my legacy. The awards followed: small business recognitions, community impact honors, sustainability commendations. Each plaque and certificate lined the entryway of Feather and Fork, displayed not out of ego, but as quiet reminders: perseverance matters, principles matter. Standing your ground, when done right, can change everything. I'll never forget the day a young couple stopped me outside the restaurant. They just moved in, pregnant with their first child, and were looking for advice on starting their own backyard garden. They'd heard my story, followed our progress. They wanted to raise their kids in a place where people grew things, shared things, supported one another. "You're the reason we bought here," they told me. We wanted to live somewhere with neighbors, not rules. That meant more to me than any award ever could. Of course, life wasn't perfect. Chickens still escaped from time to time. Rainstorms flooded garden beds. Supply chains hiccuped. Running a business wasn't easy, but it was honest, and it was mine. Every morning, I woke up with purpose. Every night, I went to bed knowing I'd built something lasting. And as for my chickens, they're practically celebrities now. Visitors come by just to see them. Kids feed them scraps, pose for pictures. We even named a signature dish after our oldest hen, Henrietta's heirloom salad. The irony always makes me smile. The greatest satisfaction, though, wasn't in winning. It was in knowing that Donna and anyone like her couldn't win either. Not against community, not against kindness, not against persistence. She thought she could scare me into submission. Instead, she inspired me to create something no HOA rulebook could ever erase. Years later, as I sat beneath the pergola behind Feather and Fork, Sipping coffee and watching families laugh over their meals, I realized Donna's defeat wasn't just my revenge. It was everyone's. It was a victory for anyone who's ever been told no by someone with a clipboard and a power trip. For everyone who's been fined, threatened, or belittled over something harmless. For everyone who believed neighborhoods should be homes, not battlegrounds. My chickens clucked nearby, scratching contentedly in the dirt. And in the distance, a neighbor's rooster crowed loud, proud, defiant. Fitting, I thought. Perfectly fitting.